years ago when you decided to come to Georgia, what were your expectations about this country and how do you like this country? And which impressions do you take back to Britain?
Well, I like this country very much. Let me start by saying that. And I take back impressions of great openness, friendliness, hospitality. And it's everything I expected it would be. I should say I've only been here 6 months because I was a temporary appointment in between 2 full-term ambassadors, which meant that it came as an unexpected but very pleasant surprise to come here.
Speak about Georgian cuisine, for example, dishes Georgian, what do you remember here? It's specific for us, you know.
Well, I should say, you know, I've been aware of Georgian cuisine for many years because, you know, I first became aware of Georgia in the 70s, and I was working in the former Soviet Union elsewhere since the 1990s. So I've been to Georgian restaurants all over the world, but there's no substitute for Georgian food in Georgia.
And I just wonder, can you tell us what difference you see in Georgians' characters, specific for Georgians, what differs from other European people? Georgian characters?
Well, I've already talked about the openness and the hospitality. Of course, that's not unique. Other countries have it as well, but I think there's a combination of musical talent, artistic energy, an enjoyment of life, and willingness to look outwards to the rest of the world and build friendships around the world, which I think is particularly Georgian.
What can you say about, for example, the country? Do you think it's interesting country by its nature or by place Georgia?
Well, of course.
The nature differs from Great Britain, or?
What do you mean physically? The countryside? Yes. Yes, I mean, I think the thing here is within a relatively small space. You've got a great variety of countryside and a lot of different micro zones, climatic zones. And I think that's, I understand that makes it hugely appealing, not just for tourists, but people like filmmakers who can make films set all over the world without having to leave Georgia.
Can you say a few words about cultural relations between Georgia and Great Britain? Briefly, what do you remember most interesting events, cultural events between 2 countries? Can you remember some?
Well, in terms of the past 6 months, of course, there's been all sorts of exchanges. You've got the Georgian playwright who took his play to the Royal Court Theatre, and it was an absolute triumph in London, very popular, very good reviews. You've had a British dance company brought out here, Can Do Co, brought out here by the British Council, who are partly disabled and partly non-disabled people dancing together, which shows that people, any people, regardless of their physical abilities, have enormous talent, and that went down very well. The art of the possible. There are all sorts of things going on all the time. Georgian singers travelling to Britain. We had a British military band out here, the Royal Marine Band, performing at the Queen's birthday party. So it's constant and 2 ways and very popular in both countries.
What was the political situation in Georgia when you came here? And what is the difference now? What was then and now?
Then and now? Well, in January when I arrived, I think people were still getting used to the idea of transition and political cohabitation. I think now we're over halfway through the period between the elections and the presidential elections in October. And I think it's shown Georgians and Georgian friends, Georgia's friends, that this new period can be well, that political parties, different political parties, can work together constructively, even though one is in government and one is in opposition. This is not easy, but there are plenty of examples now of the two sides working together constructively, and I think it builds on what was really a major achievement, the democratic and peaceful transfer of power last October.
Now the direct answer, do you think that in Georgia there is a lack of democracy, or it's quite normal here?
I think all countries, democracy is a process, not a final product. And Georgia is building its own democratic system. And there are all sorts of aspects to that. Some things there's been real progress, and I include under that last year's elections, and this year's elections and a chance to build on that further. There are a number of other elements, and these have to be, as elsewhere, built on constantly. Judicial independence, freedom of the media, freedom of assembly, protection of minorities, people who are different, so that, if in the case of Georgia, Georgia is a country for all Georgians.
Did you see mistakes of the previous government during the last years, or what do you think about their mistakes? Can you emphasize some, or you?
Well, I wasn't here then, but what I would say generally is it's hard to run a country, and no government, or every government, will achieve things and fail to achieve things. The point is, there was an election in which the Georgian people chose a different government. That government is now in power, and it's there peacefully. And one of the biggest legacies of the previous government was to say, we accept the vote of the result of the popular vote.
You know, the competition process is not a very easy process. There is everyday scandals. For example, scandals about these videos. Can you make your assessment? Was it shocked with this, or what do you think about this? Just a quick assessment.
Well, cohabitation isn't easy, and that's, I think it needs constant effort on both sides to work constructively together. And there are people very committed on both sides to doing that. And what I'd like to do is encourage this positive momentum, but recognizing that it's difficult. People believe in different things and come from different sides of the political fence. But the other thing I would say is Georgia is not the first country to experience political cohabitation. Others have experienced it and survived it successfully, and I'm confident that Georgia can too. In terms of the videos themselves, I haven't seen them. I think when you're talking about evidence for a potential trial or judicial proceedings, it's really important that the judicial proceedings themselves are the places where evaluations are made. The courts are really where evidence should be considered. And so it will be the judges, the judges themselves, who need to evaluate evidence such as this, make their own decisions, and demonstrating to the world that Georgia has judicial independence. That's the place.
What do you think of Georgian perspective in the world arena in the near future?
Well, Georgia is, well, first of all, I'm very much...
in NATO, for example.
Well, yes, I thought you might mention that. I was just going to say the words EU and NATO. We very much welcome the fact that Georgia is interested in getting closer to both the EU and to NATO. And we've been strong supporters of Georgia's Euro-Atlantic aspirations. And when I say supporters, I don't mean just in the sense of saying we're in favour of Georgia getting closer. We've actually tried to help that, both in terms of expert advice, but also in terms of regular contact between the two countries. There's a constant flow of visitors to London, to Tbilisi, both ministers and senior officials. My minister has been here, several other Foreign Office ministers and senior officials have come, and David Usupashvili, your speaker, is in London today, meeting, I think, Foreign Office ministers as we speak.
Some people say that this government is pro-Russian, and do you think that it's easy to be pro-Russian or pro-American or pro-something?
Well, I'm sure it's possible to be pro-something. The thing is, Russia is Georgia's neighbour. It's a geographic fact, and I think geography has to be taken account in terms of foreign policy and everything else. We see, Britain, see no problem in, and indeed an advantage in better relations with neighbours, which help internal security, regional security, and perhaps even broader international security. I would say that I'm a diplomat. Better relations is something that diplomats try to promote.
What will your message to Georgian people and separately to Georgian politicians to do in the future, to take examples from Great Britain, for example? Your advice for the...
Well, the first thing I'd like to say to Georgian people is thanks to everybody I've met for being so hospitable. It's been a really pleasant time in Georgia, and I am determined to return sometime. In terms of advice, I'm not sure I want to give advice. Just well, shall I just talk about those two things for a second?
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
I mean, the first thing on trade, I think this is an area where we can do much more together. The level of trade at the moment is pretty low, and for example, I think last year Georgia exported about £20 million worth of goods to Britain. The figure for British exports to Georgia was probably 120 million, something like that. There's lots of scope for doing more, and we've created a British business group here with the British businesses or British working in international businesses to help drive that process in Georgia. There's also a well-established Georgian-British Business Council which is trying to do the same both in Britain and Georgia. And I think there's a lot of interest here within Georgian business, within the Georgian government, and within Britain as well, in trying to build up the trade links, not just between the two countries, but also as Georgia starts to develop as part of a transit hub and a logistics hub, providing links across the southern Caucasus from the Caspian through to the Black Sea and back again, of course. So that's the trade side.
About Olympic Games?
And Olympic Games, yes, of course. Well, of course, that was something we were very proud of last year, and I should say both the Olympics and the Paralympics. And a big part of our bid, the case that we put to the Olympic Committee when we were trying to win the right for the Games, is that it won't just be about that month or two in July and August last year. It would be about creating a legacy that continues in terms of using sports to encourage children around the world to be more active and more healthy, but also to show through the Paralympics that there's no end to human ability. You know, all humans have potential and abilities. And I know that in Georgia, there's going to be youth games in 2015. Mm-hmm. And this is really exciting because it provides another opportunity for us to work together with Georgia on trying to promote some of these issues, you know, youth sport and you know, disabilities, recognition of the ability of people who are disabled, and really promoting their potential and raising their profile and showing how much they have to offer.
Thanks.
Thank you.